What if the sound of failure is not a death rattle, but a birth cry? We are born into this world howling, flailing, drenched in the shock of existence. No one judges an infant for its incompetence. We call it learning. But somewhere between our first steps and our first paycheck, we internalize a lie that mastery should arrive fully formed. Like Athena springing from Zeus's skull, we forget that every human skill, walking, talking, loving, begins as a series of humiliating failures. Competence is not a virtue, it's a fossil. The moment we declare ourselves good at something, we begin the unconscious work of self-mummification. Neurons that once danced with electric curiosity now harden into well-worn ruts. The pianist who memorized her recital piece at 16 grows stiff playing it at 60, fingers moving by rote as her soul withers. But the beginner is all nerve endings and lightning. Consider Thomas Edison's 1,000 failed attempts to invent the light bulb, or rather, his 1,000 discoveries of how not to do it. Modern entrepreneurs fetishize this story as a parable of grit, but they miss the deeper truth. Edison didn't just endure failure, he romanced it. Each explosion in his Menlo Park laboratory was a love letter to the unknown. Why do we conflate safety with survival? The comfort zone is not a sanctuary, it's a sarcophagus. Neuroplasticity, that miracle of mutable minds, thrives on precisely what terrifies us: disruption. Every time you struggle to conjugate a verb or hold a yoga pose, your brain is physically rewiring itself. Dendrites branch like coral reefs. Myelin sheaths thicken around fledgling skills. You are quite literally evolving in real time. The Japanese practice kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold lacquer, treating fractures as art. What if we did the same for our fractured egos? The CEO who hides her dyslexia, the parent who never sings lullabies for fear of sour notes. They are living half-lives, trading potential for the illusion of dignity. Greatness is not born, it is forged, and the hammer must strike hot steel. To shy from incompetence is to reject your own becoming. The question is not whether you can afford to fail, but whether you can afford to fossilize. So let us ask, what dormant selves might awaken if you embrace the glorious indignity of beginning? What if your worst moments are not obstacles, but gateways? We spend our lives running from the sting of incompetence, the heat in our cheeks when we mispronounce a word, the hollow pit in our stomachs when our hands betray us. But hidden in that humiliation is a merciless gift, the mirror of absolute honesty. When you are undeniably bad at something, you stand naked before your own potential. No platitudes, no illusions, just the raw terrain of what could be. Consider Albert Einstein, who was labeled a slow thinker by his teachers. The man who would unravel the universe once wrote, "I have no special talent, I am only passionately curious." His genius didn't emerge despite his early struggles, it emerged because of them. Being bad at rote memorization forced him to think differently, to question the very fabric of reality. His limitations became his laboratory. Or take J.K. Rowling, sitting on a delayed train with no job, no money, and a suitcase full of unfinished pages. In her own words, she was the biggest failure I knew. Yet it was in that free fall, stripped of all pretense, that she conceived Harry Potter. Rock bottom, she later said, became the solid foundation on which she rebuilt her life. This is the paradox. True growth begins not when we avoid failure, but when we inhabit it. When we stop flinching from our own inadequacy and instead stare into its depths, something extraordinary happens. We discover that the shame we feared was never a monster. It was a merciless mentor. Think of a time you were truly terrible at something. Not casually unskilled, but agonizingly out of your depth. Recall the sweat on your palms, the voice in your head hissing, "Quit." Now ask yourself, what did that moment reveal about you? Did it expose cowardice or courage, a fragile ego, or a stubborn refusal to surrender? The Japanese concept of kintsukuroi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold, teaches that damage need not be disguised. It can be highlighted, made beautiful, precisely because it happened. Your failures are not cracks in your foundation. They are the seams where new strength is forged. So the next time you fumble, pause. Before the self-recrimination kicks in, ask, what is this moment trying to teach me? The answer might not be about the skill you're failing at, but the person you're becoming in the attempt. Because here's the secret no one tells you. Mastery is not the opposite of failure. It is failure's most devoted student. We love the myth of the natural, the prodigy who picks up a violin and plays like Paganini, the writer whose first draft reads like scripture, the athlete who moves like they were born with a ball at their feet. These stories seduce us because they whisper a dangerous promise. Greatness is something you're given, not something you earn. But what if that's the most toxic lie we tell ourselves? Consider Michelangelo chiseling away at a block of Carrara marble for 3 years to create David. What tourists don't see in Florence's Accademia Gallery are the mountains of discarded stone chips, the failed attempts, the moments when even the master doubted his hands. He once wrote, "If people knew how hard I worked to achieve my mastery, it wouldn't seem so wonderful at all." Or take Serena Williams, arguably the greatest tennis player of all time. The world sees the Grand Slam titles, but not the pre-dawn drills in Compton, the thousands of serves launched into the dark until her shoulder burned. "Luck," she once said, "has nothing to do with it." We've been conditioned to believe that struggle is the mark of the amateur, that if you were truly gifted, it wouldn't feel so hard. But neuroscience tells a different story. Studies of elite performers, from chess grandmasters to concert pianists, reveal the same pattern. What looks like effortless genius is actually the result of deliberate practice, the kind that borders on obsession. The brain doesn't distinguish between natural talent and hard-won skill. Every ability, from speaking a language to throwing a curveball, is built through repetition, failure, and relentless refinement. The so-called gifted are simply those who've fallen in love with the grind. So why does the myth persist? Because it lets us off the hook. If greatness is innate, then our mediocrity isn't our fault. We can shrug and say, "I'm just not built for this," rather than face the terrifying truth that excellence is available to anyone willing to endure the apprenticeship. The next time you watch a virtuoso perform, don't ask, "How are they so good?" Ask instead, "What did they sacrifice to get here?" The answer will always be the same. Years of being bad, of looking foolish, of pushing through the plateau when no one was clapping. Talent isn't the spark, it's the fire that's left after all the sparks have burned out. There is a special kind of arrogance in assuming you should already be good at something. We live in a culture that worships expertise, but ridicules the learning curve. We want to skip the awkward phase, the fumbling, the not knowing. But what if true brilliance begins with the courage to say, "I don't understand"? Charles Darwin spent 8 years studying barnacles, 8 years meticulously dissecting these unglamorous sea creatures before publishing On the Origin of Species. His contemporaries mocked him. Why would a thinker of his caliber waste time on such trivialities? But Darwin understood something radical. Depth comes from dwelling in the questions, not racing to answers. His foolish obsession with barnacles laid the groundwork for the theory that would redefine biology. This is the paradox of mastery. The fastest way to get good is to embrace being bad. Silicon Valley didn't coin fail fast. Nature did. Evolution is the ultimate trial and error algorithm. Every extinct species, every genetic dead end was a necessary failure that paved the way for life as we know it. The same principle applies to human achievement. When physicist Richard Feynman first encountered quantum mechanics, he didn't pretend to grasp it. He filled notebooks with childish questions, drew silly diagrams, and admitted when he was lost. This intellectual humility, this willingness to look stupid, became his superpower. While others nodded along to concepts they half understood, Feynman's beginner's mind led him to Nobel Prize-winning insights. The Japanese call this shoshin, the beginner's mind that stays open, curious, and free from the burden of expertise. It's why a white belt in martial arts often learns faster than a black belt. One is hungry. The other is heavy with what they already know. So the next time you're tempted to fake competence, ask yourself, what might I discover if I gave myself permission to not know? The answer might terrify you. Because once you stop pretending, once you admit how much you don't understand, you become dangerous. You become teachable. Greatness doesn't ask for your credentials. It asks for your curiosity. Perfectionism is not the pursuit of excellence. It is the fear of failure dressed in ambition's clothing. We've been sold a dangerous myth that brilliance arrives polished, that mastery should be seamless from the first attempt. But history tells a different story. Van Gogh's first paintings were clumsy, thick with the uncertainty of a man who picked up a brush at 27 with no formal training. The Wright brothers' early prototypes didn't soar. They splintered. What if the desire to be perfect is actually what keeps us from becoming extraordinary? Modern psychology reveals a cruel irony. Those who demand flawless first efforts learn slowest. A study of art students found that the ones most paralyzed by perfection produced the least inventive work. Meanwhile, those willing to make ugly art, to experiment without apology, were the ones who eventually created something original. This isn't just about art. It's about the fundamental architecture of learning. Every new skill requires what neuroscientists call error correction, the process by which mistakes literally rewire our brains. When you play a wrong note on piano, stumble through a foreign phrase, or miss a shot in basketball, your nervous system is mapping new territory. Perfectionism interrupts this process, turning every misstep into a crisis rather than data. Consider Edison again, not the mythic inventor, but the man who filled 2,500 notebooks with half-baked ideas, dead ends, and outright failures. He understood something we've forgotten. The road to breakthrough is paved with embarrassing drafts. The Japanese concept of wabi-sabi honors the beauty of imperfection, the cracked teacup, the asymmetrical bowl. What if we applied this to our own growth? What if we saw our early attempts not as failures, but as artifacts of becoming? So the next time you hesitate to begin because you might do it poorly, ask yourself this: would I rather have a perfect record of never trying, or an imperfect body of work that proves I dared? Because here's the truth no one tells you. The world isn't changed by those who wait until they're ready. It's changed by those who start before they're qualified. We live in an age of instant everything. Instant meals, instant replies, instant gratification. But mastery takes time, not weeks, not months, years. The research is unequivocal. The so-called 10-year rule suggests that it takes a minimum of a decade of deliberate practice to achieve world-class expertise in any field. Mozart composed for over 15 years before producing his masterworks. Da Vinci labored on the Mona Lisa for 16 years and still considered it unfinished. Why does this terrify us? Because we've been conditioned to expect linear progress, to believe that effort should always yield visible results. But true growth doesn't work that way. Learning curves are not smooth ascents. They are jagged cliffs with long plateaus where nothing seems to change. These plateaus are where most people quit, mistaking them for dead ends rather than the necessary consolidation of skill. Consider the bamboo tree. After planting, it shows no visible growth for 5 years, while underground, it develops an elaborate root system. Then, in just 6 weeks, it shoots up 90 feet. Are you willing to be the bamboo? To trust the invisible work? The greatest trap is the expectation of constant improvement. Jazz legend Miles Davis spent years sounding like a poor imitation of his heroes before finding his own voice. Jiro Ono, the sushi master featured in Jiro Dreams of Sushi, spent 70 years perfecting 8 pieces of fish on rice. This is the paradox. The people who achieve the most are often those most comfortable with not seeing progress. They understand that mastery isn't about the destination. It's about falling in love with the daily practice, whether results come or not. So the next time you're tempted to quit because you're not getting better, ask yourself, am I measuring the right thing? The inches of progress or the depth of my commitment? Because the secret no one tells you is this: the plateau isn't the enemy of mastery. It is mastery, just in its silent subterranean phase. How many times have you told yourself, I'm just not built for this? We carry invisible barriers in our minds, ceilings of what we believe is possible for us. Too old, not smart enough, not athletic, not creative. But what if these limits are illusions? For decades, science told us the adult brain was fixed, that by your mid-20s, your neural pathways were set in stone. But neuroplasticity research has shattered that myth. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself in response to experience. London taxi drivers who memorize the city's labyrinthine streets physically grow larger hippocampi, the brain's memory center. Violinists develop enhanced neural connections in their fingering hands. The implications are staggering. Your current abilities are not your final form. Consider the case of John Wooden, the legendary UCLA basketball coach. He didn't recruit naturally gifted players. He recruited learners. His famous pyramid of success wasn't built on talent, but on skills like industriousness, enthusiasm, and patience. The result? 10 national championships in 12 years. Or take Julia Child, who didn't touch a chef's knife until age 37. In her memoir, she described her early attempts at French cooking as a comedy of errors. Yet she became an icon by embracing what she called the courage of imperfection. The barrier isn't your biology, it's your belief system. When psychologist Carol Dweck studied children's approaches to challenges, she found that those with a growth mindset, who believed skills could be developed, consistently outperformed their fixed mindset peers, even when starting at the same ability level. So the next time you hit a wall, ask yourself, is this truly my limit or just the edge of my current comfort zone? Because History shows us again and again the human capacity for growth is far greater than we dare imagine. So where do we go from here? Mastery is not an event, it's a practice. Not something you achieve, but something you live. And like any practice, it thrives on repetition, ritual, and a radical reframing of what it means to fail. Start small. Make micro failures a daily habit. Miss a chord on purpose. Speak the foreign word wrong. Send the imperfect draft. These are not mistakes. They are vaccinations against the fear of incompetence. Each small stumble trains your nervous system to interpret failure not as a threat, but as feedback. Next, rewrite your inner monologue. When your inner critic snarls, "You're terrible at this," add 2 words, "for now." That simple linguistic shift transforms a death sentence into a doorway. Create a failure log, not to dwell on mistakes, but to track patterns of growth. That botched presentation? Note what you learned about audience engagement. The rejected proposal? Document how it sharpened your thinking. Over time, this becomes your most valuable text, a living record of your evolution. Surround yourself with fellow beginners. Join communities where incompetence is celebrated as progress. The ceramics class full of lopsided bowls. The language meetup where everyone butchers tenses. These are your temples of transformation. Finally, and this is crucial, schedule regular, deliberate discomfort. Once a month, try something you're guaranteed to be awful at. Ballroom dancing, stand-up comedy, coding. The activity doesn't matter. The humbling does. This maintains what psychologist Abraham Maslow called beginner's humility, that precious state of openness essential for growth. Remember, every expert was once a beginner who refused to quit. Every masterpiece was once a mess. The violin concerto that moves you to tears began as screeching strings. The novel that keeps you up at night started with a terrible first draft. So go forth and be gloriously, unapologetically bad. Not as a phase to endure, but as the foundation of what you'll become. Because the secret no one tells you, greatness isn't the absence of failure. It's the accumulation of every time you kept going anyway.